Hello, it's me, and it's time to roll out this fantastic puzzle by Traiphum, the 5x7x9. Now, a 5x7x9, this is of the form of what I call the ultimate shapeshifter. Called that because, well, just like a base cube, it turns 90 degrees in all directions. And because it has different lengths in each direction, it shapeshifts in each direction also. But it's somewhat distinguishing from the other cuboids in that you run into every kind of parity. You run into floppy parities, brick parities, and by the end of this solve, you'll see everything that a cuboid can throw at you. Any type of parity that can occur, any type of challenge, all embodied within this 5x7x9. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through kind of a little video log on solving this. I understand that not a lot of people have this. However, the techniques and the strategies can possibly be applied to other puzzles that might give you some trouble. So we'll start off with the scramble. Now, when doing a large shapeshifter like this, I want to make sure that I'm enhancing the scramble as much as I can. So I'm just going to start separating things from each other by starting off with 180 degree turns. Now, this is one of those puzzles where it's actually possible to not fit the whole thing on screen. And this is also to demonstrate just how well this puzzle is made. It's filled in with epoxy sculpt so that it looks very spick and span. It looks very pristine, like something that's mass-produced, actually better than mass-produced, done by an artist. I mean, you can't mass-produce the Mona Lisa, and if you did, it wouldn't look exactly the same. It's kind of likened on to that. And when I ask the question, why do you collect? Why do you try to gather so many puzzles? Well, some people like to make model airplanes. Some people like to do a variety of other hobbies. With this, it's a hobby that's playable. And even if you can't solve it, you can still admire the workmanship that goes into it. So after doing a nice 180 degree scramble with that, we can start getting into more of the cuboid scramble. So we'll move this up over here like so, and then move this over here. What I'm trying to do is scramble it in such a way right now where I'm not bandaging anything quite yet. Because the more you start to scramble this, the more you bandage this into its lowest common shape, which in this case will be like a 5x5. So the strategy of this will have everything to do with scrambling it like, or solving it like a 5x5. So I'm going to move this over here. Once I've done that, I'm going to start going to another area. Again, my goal is to try to not bandage it quite yet. So I'm going to move this across here, double turn over here. So I haven't bandaged the ends, but I am starting to bandage certain aspects of it. The hope is that I'm getting a nice scramble before I do that. Once I believe that I'm done with the ends, I can start doing more midline scrambles, and by that I mean I start to scramble it from the center. So notice the centers have been pretty well kept, but now I'm ready to move on beyond that. So I'm going to start scrambling the centers in with each other. And as I'm doing that, the true bandaging of the puzzle occurs. Now, it's surprisingly stable. Even though you've got tiny pieces, and you can see some of the guts are being displayed here too, I've yet to have pieces pop. Actually, I think maybe one or two came off, but I don't think it was popping. I think that some of the extensions that are glued on came unglued. So you can see the movement of this is really pleasurable. When collecting modifications or three-dimensionally printed puzzles, the thing that you look at is not just the ingenuity, but how playable is the puzzle. If I find that I'm barely able to turn it, if I find that each turn takes a lot of maneuvering to try to line things up, it does detract from the joy of it, from the pleasure of it. But Traiphum's products, I think maybe because they're mass-produced, it doesn't lose any of that. You do have to be cautious, sometimes lining things up. If something has significant Olsing effects, then it's sometimes hard to decide what's supposed to be where, like right here. there is some lining up that has to happen. Once it is lined up, it moves pretty freely. So there's the potential for popping, but it's not a significant problem with this. I'm going to go ahead and continue the scramble process, but you can see I'm starting to bandage layers, and I'll come back with you with a nice fully scrambled 5x7x9. Abracadabra. Okay, so look at this chaotic piece of art here. So when looking at this, you can see there's a variety of different types of edges. The complexity of this puzzle and the number of pieces is so varied that you can see one type of edge over here, you can see another type of edge over here, different types of edges here and here. You've got this here and this. These are two different types of edges. Looking at the center, you've got a center over here surrounded by other center pieces, some of which look similar, some of which don't. So this is kind of a marathon, but it puts into play all the different types of cuboid strategies that you need. So where do we start with something like this? And I always like it when something starts off really jumbled up, so to speak, and even just the notion of getting it back to a cuboid form, regardless of the color, even if there are no stickers, is still something of an interesting challenge. So you're really in twisty puzzle heaven with this one. So what do we do? What do you do when confronted with a complex cuboid like this? Well, being a 5x7x9 and being the fact that you have a lot of things that are bandaged together, what you really want to do is you want to start freeing things up as much as possible. You want to free up the bandaging, and once you free up the bandaging, you can free up layers so that you can start putting things in. So what about this puzzle is not bandaged at all? Well, it's the lowest layered side, which is the 5. And you can see that this whole thing here can constitute as a non-bandaged portion. You can see that there's complexity. There's at least 1, 2, 3 layers buried in here, but this is one side that I can move. Then I've got another side here that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. So basically on each side, there's 5 layers I can move here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at every side, I can move it in 5 layers. So when you are confronted with a cuboid like this, the least amount of layers is the one that's not bandaged at all, that has the least amount of bandaging. In this case, it's the 5x5 version of it. So the first part of the step in solving a massive beast like this is to free up all the layers, undo the bandaging, but first you have to solve it at its base cube n by n by n form, which is the 5x5. I only have 5 layers that I can really reasonably work with. Every so often I might free up another layer by accident, but not consistently. So I'm going to work with only the layers that I have, and I'm going to work with it as a 5x5, which means it's an odd layered puzzle. I know where my centers are supposed to be, and with that, I know where my edges are. So with a 5x5, it consists of something like this. You've got a center, you've got 3 pieces that make up the edge, and then you've got corners. So too, I've got a little center over here. I've got 3 pieces that I can move freely that make up the edges. 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, and then I've got the corner. So I'm going to solve it really starting off just like a 5x5. And I'm going to start off my 5x5 solve by doing a reduction, and after that reduction, then I'm going to solve it as a 3x3. So using this as the base puzzle, showing how to solve this, knowing that there's a couple of different parts, we'll go ahead and scramble this 5x5 just to kind of go through that. You may not have this puzzle, but you might have a 5x5. You may have questions regarding the solve of that. So we'll scramble this one up. Okay, so this is a scrambled 5x5, and the techniques that I'm going to use are the same. The first step in the process of freeing up the layers here to solve a beast like this is we're going to do the process of reduction from my 5x5 down to a 3x3. And again, what I'm trying to do is solve the inner 5x5 with this. In an even layer puzzle, that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If you wanted to solve the centers, then if we were to start off with, say, the green over here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solve a line over here. So I'm going to take edges, I'm going to call these the edge portions of the center, the central portions of the center, and the corner portions of the center. So move this like so. And I'm going to take this, move this in. I've got a line over here. And on the bottom here, I'm going to continue to make 1x3 bars. 1x3 bar here. Move this in. And make another 1x3 bar here. And it's as simple as that. So now I've got this. The next, we have a guidance as to where we go next because these centers are attached right to the core. So too, I'm going to line up edges, bring it in. And I'm not, like I say, a speed cuber. There are faster ways of doing this, but I kind of prefer just to do it simply. Move this in like so. And I've got this one that can move into here. Now in order to move this in without destroying this, I can take this, move it over to here, bump it out of the way, move it back just to bring that back in. This red one comes in and we've got that in. I can now do the same thing here. This is just a matter of playing around with it. Taking this here, taking that out of the way, bringing it back. I've got a 1x3 bar here. Move it in, here, turn, and turn. So this is done, quote, intuitively, but I've got this center here, this center here. Now, the trouble that you might be having with giant cubes is the last two centers. This is done, if it's not a super cube, it's fairly straightforward. And what I'm going to do is take these two and move it into this space over here. And the way that you can do that is take this down, move it into this slot so it occupies this space. Bump that out of the way. Now bear in mind, we moved it in with these two layers. If you move it in with these two layers, take it out of the way with the layer that you did not use, then move that down. Now just undo what you did. Move it back, take these two layers that you originally moved down, bring that back, and now turn this around to bring this one back in finally. So you end up with this, and then we finish up, this will come into here, turn it in, which sets up this over here, this 1x3 bar that we moved in with this middle layer. Take it out of the way, move it out with this more end layer. So we have this over here. Bring this back to move this layer back in, turn and turn. So it's a pretty simple way of getting centers. Edge reduction on a 5x5 is going to be a matter of, once again, moving things in, bumping it out of the way and moving it out. So I'm going to take this over here. Now you can see this is the right color, but it's in the wrong place. So I'm going to take this piece over here, the orange and green, and I want to line it up to where I don't get any placement issues. So what I'm going to do is bring it down, bump it out of the way, put another edge in, bring it back, and move this back in, undoing that. That puts this over here. I'm then going to take the other one of the same color, move it in so that I have this over here, take it out of the way, bring this down to replace it with another edge, and that'll help bring the center back. So once I got the centers in, I can easily bring that back so I have this over here. The rest is a matter of following suit. So when you're at the last two edges, and you can tell because we have the yellow and blue here, we have it here, we've got the orange and yellow here as well as here. What you want to do to match them up is you want to exchange this for this or this for this. So looking around, if I put this over here and put this over here, I'd want to exchange these guys. So to do that, I would just take this and we're going to move this side into here. If I wanted to exchange this to here, I would move this side into here and put on the right side. As long as wherever you move it to, you've got where you just moved it to on the right side. So whether it's taking this and swapping these two, moving this to the right here, or if you happen to want to swap these two, move this to the left, but keeping that at the right, you then move on to the next algorithm. So I'm going to take this, I want to swap these two, put this over here, and the algorithm is R, F-I-U, R-I-F, and swap it on back. And you'll see that you've got this in over here, but we have a little bit of a placement issue here. I'm not going to call that a parity because it would be a parity if I tried to solve it like this. And upon solving it like this, I'm going to find that these two would not be coordinated with everything else. This one would be, but these two wouldn't be. And if this were just a 4x4, I wouldn't have this to anchor me to let me know that this is wrong. This would just be wrong. So I'd end up with an impossible situation at the end. So because of that, I've got this over here to tell me when this could become a parity should I not have an edge piece that's connected right to the core. So what I'm going to show you, if you don't know, is probably the most important algorithm that you're going to need to know to solve cuboids, especially those with any type of parity, more or less things like floppy parities and whatnot. And that's the Red Bull algorithm. And what it does is pretty simple. There's a lot of applications for it, but simply what it does is it takes these two and it swaps them. So this comes over here, this comes over here, and they also rotate. So when this is here, this will be flipped. When this is here, this will be flipped. And that's going to have a variety of utilities. But what the Red Bull algorithm is going to do is just moving this as my R slice and this as my L slice. It's 2R, 2B, 2U, L. That's your Red Bull part. 2 up, RI, 2 up, R, 2 up, 2F, R, 2F. Then I think of liberate, LI, 2B, 2R. And that'll get that back. And what you have now is you basically have a reduced 3x3. For all intents and purposes, you've reduced your 5x5 down to a 3x3, where we can then proceed with the beginner's method in order to solve that. But before we do that, let's take what we've shown and apply it to this monster to see that it's really no different. So we can pick pretty much any center to start off with, and being an even layer puzzle, that'll make it kind of easy. We can start off with a white one here. Now the thing to notice is that these have different shapes to them, but they're all equivalent to shapes over here. They're just not equivalent to each other. This can be swapped with this can be swapped with this can be swapped with this. That's actually a similar situation with this puzzle here. This cannot be swapped with this, and this cannot be swapped with this. The only type of puzzle that can do that is something called a mix-up puzzle, but that's another story. So you can see that I've got the edges over here, a 1x3 bar. Ignore this. The reason why I'm ignoring these center pieces over here is that's not part of my base 5x5 solve. My centers are 1x3 bars over here. So I'm going to have to ignore these for now because they're going to be variably bandaged. I can't separate these guys out. So here's a 1x3 bar, and I'm simply going to be looking for other opportunities. So I've got these two over here. Let's find another white one. And I've got to pay close attention to what I'm identifying as a good culprit. I'm going to move this like this. I'm basically doing 5x5 turns. This is going to end up over here next to here. So turn it in. And then I can just move this over here. And, whoop, there it is over here. Move it like so. And take this 1x3 bar, turn it in here. So far, so good. Now I knocked this one out because I want to create another 1x3 bar. See if there's something here that I can use. This guy over here. So let's turn this here. And again, despite the complexity of this puzzle, we're starting very simple. Turn this here. Okay, once I've done that, move this in, and I've created my 1x3 bar. Now the fun thing about this puzzle is the perspective is very difficult at the beginning, but it becomes easier as you start putting in the form. So got it right here. So I have my first center. Next center is easy to figure out what goes where. Here's an orange, so we'll do the orange next. We'll find an orange center edge. It's not going to be any of these two. It's going to be here or here. That's what I'm looking for, like this over here. So I'm just going to turn this up and then turn it in. So I've got this. I'm just going to bump this to the side, moving it just like a 5x5, and make other 1x3 bars. Now there is equivalency with this. It's not a supercuboid. Despite the fact that these look different, these two are equivalent to each other. They can be interchanged. If it was a supercuboid, then these could not be interchanged, just like these could be. This Olsing effect does not make it a supercuboid. because you can still exchange the proper pieces. I can exchange any of these corners for each other. So too I can exchange any of these corners for each other as well. So don't let the different shapes fool you into thinking that we're dealing with a super cuboid. We're actually not. Okay, so where was I? I was putting this into here. Now here's an edge, central edge piece over here, so I'm just gonna give it a nice home with these guys. I'm going to turn this in here and then move this into here. Get another 1x3 bar. And again, I can't use any of these or these. So I have to remember which are the 5x5 centerpieces that I'm going to be using. Okay, this perhaps can join with this guy over here. Nope, fooled myself. That's the wrong piece. But this one can. Come right over here. Double turn. And bring it back. Now what you're going to find is that as I start creating my 5x5, it's going to be a lot easier to visualize what's going on. And move this back here. Okay, find a central edge piece, which is right over here. And it's the same techniques that I'm using. Move this like so. And I would take this and move it into here. So you move it in. And so as not to destroy this side, simply take this out of the way. And we can move this back safely without touching this. So now we take this 1x3 bar and move it into its proper center, right over here. Turn and turn. All right, so as you can see, I've got two of my centers in, this one and this one. No difference with my 5x5 solve. Now taking a look at the green one here, well, let's see. Is there anything that's already kind of in? Here's a blue one. I can easily slip this blue center edge, turn this like so, move this in, bump it out of the way, move this down to bring this back. Okay, take this back down here, so now we've got it over here. So I'm going to do some more 1x3 bars. I've got this. If I can get a central edge from somewhere, then we're cooking. And I've got a couple here to choose from. So turn this over here. This whole thing here collectively is just like one of these. That's how to look at it. Once you get used to that, you can keep your perspective. Move this like so. And I'll take this, move it into here. Kersplat. All right, so there's my 1x3 bar. I want to bump this out of the way to put back what I just took out, like so. Okay, that's to get this one back. Now I want to move this into here, so that's what I'll do. Move it in. Then I got a double turn. And then move it back to get this one back. This is one of those puzzles that you have to use two hands to do. It's a monster of a puzzle, and your wrists are pretty sore afterwards. Okay, this one I want to make as part of another 1x3 bar with this guy here. So let's move this to the side. Bring this in to move it into place. Bump it out of the way to bring my centers back. Kersplat. Okay. I just need the other central corner piece over here. Got a nice one. Well, no, that's not it. That's not going to work. So it's got to be one of these. Bring this to the side. Make sure we're nice and lined up. And then we move this in. Bump it out of the way and move this back. Okay, so once again, I want to move this into here. So I'm going to move this like so. Okay, to move this into here, just like what we did with the large centers on these guys, I'm going to take this 1x3 area, bring it out like a fishing net, turn this into where that position is now, kersplat, and I'll bring this in. So that way this is coordinated with this center over here, and pow. All right, so we're getting it. We've got 1, 2, 3 centers over here. Kind of hard to keep this on camera. Next will be the red. Still creating my 1x3 bars. Nope, wrong red. Now understand too, remember, these are all equivalent to each other, and just because these shapes are different, these are still equivalent to each other as well. So like I say, it's not a super cuboid, even if the shapes look a little different to you. So I was putting red ones in here. I can move this one in, and this one in. Bump this out of the way, like so, and then move these layers back. Okay, continually creating 1x3 bars. I've got a red one over here, a red one over here, a red corner piece to go in, a red central corner piece with a red central edge piece like so. Turn and turn. So far this should not be rocking your world in terms of the solve. Okay, this one can come into here, or I can use another one. So I'm using my equivalencies to work to my benefit. So it could be this red. So that's what I mean about equivalent. I could use this red to put it in, or this red to be used. Doesn't matter. So turn. That's what makes the non-supercuboid versions of these puzzles very straightforward. And turn. So as I just have one unused, I have 2 unused slots, I can simply take this, move it in, double turn, and move it out. And finally, I've got a central edge here, I've got a central corner here. I'm going to line them up together. Oh, actually, this is wrong. Move this back. It's got to be this one. So turn it like so. Move this in. Bump it out of the way. And turn it back. Okay. I've got these 2 over here. Now I'm going to use that other technique to place that into its proper center. By the other technique, I mean if I want to place multiple pieces into a central area, I can do that. So I'm going to use a similar technique. I've got these 2 slots that I need to put a red one in, which is these 2 over here. It's going to be a little easier to be able to line things up. So these 2 red ones are going to occupy this slot with these layers here. So I'm going to move it in with this layer like so. Bang. So these just got moved in, but I had to move these 2 layers in to do that. So now I'm going to turn this out of the way. Now I'm going to move it back out with this layer over here. Turn, and now I'm going to undo what I just did. Always concentrating on what you just did. And not forgetting, because it's not as easy to make the turns. Now I'm going to move these two layers back in, just like I did before. Okay, like so. That places these back in. Now I'm going to turn this, and the layer that I created down here, which is here, is now going to come back in. So in that way, you can place multiple pieces into centers. Now I have my last two centers, and again, it's not a supercube solve. So what I'm going to do is just place them bit by bit, as much as I can, do as many as I can. So I've got these three that can occupy this space over here. So what I'm going to do is bump this out of the way. I'm going to take these three, put it into this slot, which will bump these three out of the way for now, but that's okay, because when I turn this around, like so, these three will now occupy this slot, and these three will occupy in here. Splat. And that brings me to the last two pieces. Once again, this can be here, it can be here, it can be here, here. So once again, complete equivalency of pieces. Even if the shape looks different. Whoop. We'll keep this over here. So using that same technique, I'm going to take this, place it into here. So place it in. I've created this 1x3 bar. Bump it out of the way after making sure it's lined up. Once I've created that and taken it out of the way, move it like so, and I'll undo what I just did. We have that pattern again. Take it back, move this central slice back up, and now take this back down here, and move this back up. Okay, so what you see is all of my centers are now reduced. My 5x5 centers are reduced, and you can see the chaos of this puzzle has just a little bit more order to it.